One must imagine Sisyphus happy. Absurdist philosopher Albert Camus picked an interesting case here. Sisyphus, in Greek mythology, was a crafty son of a bitch who found multiple ways of cheating death. For the full story, see Overly Sarcastic Productions, we're going to skip ahead to his eternal punishment. Spoiler alert for a literally ancient story, but Sisyphus eventually does die, and he stays dead this time. To punish him for his misdeeds and to keep him from coming up with any other clever ideas, the gods assign him a boring and repetitive and impossible task. Sisyphus must roll a boulder up to the top of the hill. However, every single time he approaches the top, the boulder escapes and rolls back to the bottom, and he's forced to start all over again. The fate of Sisyphus has resonated with a lot of people over the centuries. It's represented everything from humanity's struggle against cosmic forces to the never-ending cycle of washing one's dishes. More particularly, it has represented the frustration of doing these tasks over and over and never being able to achieve an end state. But Camus raises an interesting question. Does the fate of Sisyphus have to suck? Imagine that Sisyphus stops playing this game by the rules that the gods set. Sure, the gods said that his task is to get the boulder to the top of the mountain, at which point he would presumably be free. But the gods' game is rigged, and it's meant to be unwinnable for Sisyphus. So what if he discards the goal of reaching the top and being done? What if he starts making up his own goals? Pushing the boulder isn't optional, but the frustration and the suffering just might be. Can Sisyphus, by changing his goal, cheat the gods one more time? Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. My name's Kit Kerrigan, and I am not a therapist. What I am is a neurodivergent person with a very complex mental health history, a special interest in the brain, and over 20 years of therapy under my belt. So I can't tell you what to do with your brain, but I can tell you all the shit I've had to do for mine. Okay, so here's the basic idea of changing the goal. We have some kind of goal. Maybe it's move this boulder to the top of the hill. Maybe it's show everyone that the gods are complete tools and don't deserve to be worshipped. But this is an outcome that we're carrying around in our brains, and we're trying to make it real. While we're walking around with this goal in our heads, the world goes on existing around us. So what's the current state of that world? Where is the boulder right now? How much respect are the gods getting back into the living world? That's the current state of the world. Now, I'm using the words current state on purpose because the world is constantly changing. Our actions can affect the world around us. Pushing on the boulder can move the boulder closer to the top of the hill. Writing a defamatory limerick can get people laughing at the gods. But there are also many other factors that affect the state of the world. A slippery patch of mud can get the boulder sliding back down the hill. A heartfelt epic can rekindle faith in the gods. So the current state of the world is always in flux, whether we're acting on it or not. Now, the concept of a goal is that we want the current state of the world to align with that goal we're carrying in our heads. And so what our brains do is they're constantly making a comparison. They take in information about the world around us and information about the goals that we're carrying in our heads, and they assess the gap between those two states. How far is the boulder from the top of the hill? How much of the population has begun thumbing their nose at the gods? And this gap is important. When we perceive a gap between our goals and the current state of the world, we tend to experience stress. And this stress can turn into a lot of different emotions for different people, different situations. It can be everything from the thrill of the challenge to panic to despair. But as a general rule, humans are going to want to move to alleviate that stress. The most intuitive way to alleviate that stress is by taking steps towards our goal. So bringing the state of the world closer to that mental goal state we have. But there are times when our goals and our drive to achieve them begin to cause problems or create risks for us. And this is where it helps to examine our goals and potentially change them. Let's take a common example here. Driving. Driving is stressful to me for a number of reasons. It's a ton of sensory information to process all at once. It's a social situation where I have to read people with very limited data, and I am incapable of forgetting that cars are dangerous. But what really puts the finishing touch on my driving stress is that I want to be on time. And everything that slows me down, road closures, constructions, missing a turn, bad weather, it aggravates the hell out of my time stress. So my goal to get somewhere on time actually becomes a liability as I get not only more stressed, but I get more likely to make risky driving decisions in order to be there on time. I need to change this goal. As with many other things, changing the goal means making a trade with my brain. My brain will not accept getting into the car without a goal. It's going to set goals. I can either give it a goal or I can let it make its own. There's going to be a goal. So what's a goal I can set for my driving that avoids the pitfalls of be there on time? I need to consistently drive in a way that keeps me safe, and I need to escape that crushing weight of the ticking clock. So my replacement goal is to get there safely. So if my goal is to get somewhere safely instead of on time, it becomes a lot easier to accept delays that are out of my control and to handle mistakes like missing a turn without making a risky decision. It's a goal that I'm more able to meet, and it's a goal that incentivizes safe choices. Funny thing, switching out my goal actually wasn't that easy. The thing about goals is that we form them for a reason. They don't just fall out of the sky. There's some underlying need that we're trying to meet through that goal. So when I go to examine and change a goal, I not only have to name my existing goal, drive to places on time, I have to look for the need that that goal is meeting. I need to show up on time for appointments so that I can actually see my doctors. I need to show up on time for work so that I can do my job and fund my cat's lifestyle. I need to respect my friends' time by not making them wait on me. So I have a real need to be on time for things. But trying to meet that need through my driving isn't helpful for me. So the trick to being able to let go of punctuality as my driving goal is to find another way of meeting that need. So here's how I split these goals up. All my control over being on time happens in the preparation phase. I give myself generous time buffers when I'm getting ready to go somewhere, so that if something goes wrong, I'm still leaving with plenty of time to get where I need to go. I budget more driving time than the driving apps say I'll need, so that I can still be on time if something goes wrong on the way there. But the minute I climb into my car, the goal I focus on is getting there safely. And this works well for me. If I'm being honest, leaving early is a safer bet for getting there on time than anything I could possibly do with driving. And the downside of this approach, so there's going to be a downside, there's always trade-offs, is that I frequently arrive early for things. This is, however, a much easier problem for me to solve than getting into a car accident. I bring a book. I hang out and read somewhere until the time I'm actually supposed to show up. If I get too jittery to read, I take a little walk. If only all of my problems could be solved by bringing a book. So that's the basic version of changing the goal. And this basic version is already powerful. But driving goals aren't the only ones that I need to examine and modify. So our next rung of difficulty are the goals that involve other people. I am very prone to a fixer mentality. This belief that I can and should make other people's lives better, especially when one of my loved ones is struggling. And this may not sound like a problem on the surface, but let's take a look at the automatic goals I get from this belief and how they play out in real life. So my default goal when I am in fixer mode is for the other person to become happy and stay happy. The thing about this goal, though, is that it's a goal I can't actually fulfill. There are a ton of factors that go into someone's happiness: their health, their workplace, their social world, their finances, their approach to mental health, their hobbies, the state of the entire world. And none of those things are under my control. Some of them are under my loved one's control. Some of them aren't. And so my default goal is perpetually unmet. Now, as long as a goal remains unmet, that internal pressure to move towards the goal stresses me out and it shapes the decisions I make. So if I'm carrying this perpetually unmet goal of making and keeping someone happy, that shapes how I engage with the other person. I'm more likely to offer help that I can't actually afford, whether it's money, time, resources, serving as an emotional punching bag, picking up extra responsibilities, whatever. I'm also a lot more likely to bulldoze the other person's boundaries by giving unwanted advice, doing things for them rather than letting them figure out their own way of doing things, or just generally giving them the constant impression that they are doing something wrong. And all of these behaviors that crop up are unhealthy for me. They're unhealthy for the other person, and they're unhealthy for our relationship. And so as nice as that goal sounds to make and keep my loved ones happy, that's not actually a healthy goal for me to keep. All right, so let's peel back this goal and look at the needs that it's serving. I found that there are actually two major driving forces for this goal. One of them is altruistic. So looking out for and supporting each other is a key part of how social animals, and especially humans, function in groups. It is very normal to care about other people, and it is not something that I need to get rid of. The other need, and I didn't catch on to this one for years, although I'm pretty sure that all my therapists were trying to tell me about it. This is my need to feel safe and secure, especially in my home. Seeing another person in distress all the time sets off a lot of alarm bells that tell me I am not safe. So if I'm going to let go of my goal to make someone happy and keep them happy, I have to factor in both of these needs that the goal is trying to meet. I can't make someone's life better. Whether we're talking about their internal life or their external life, it's their life to manage, not mine. And so I adjust my goal by remembering that and factoring in the other person's right to autonomy. I can't make my loved ones happy. All the choices that shape their lives are theirs to make. So instead, I set the goal of supporting my loved ones on their own journeys. I can listen to them talk about what their journey looks like. I can cheerlead their efforts. I can share my resources to a degree that doesn't compromise my own well-being. And rather than offering advice, framing things as you should do this, I make it a point to put my perspectives into I statements. So this is what I did when I ran into this problem. This is how that turned out for me. Yeah, those I messages that may have come up in school programs or therapy programs. The therapists are actually onto something. Clarifying that I'm sharing what I've experienced ends up affirming that I'm not telling anyone else what to do, and that my situation may be different from theirs, that there may be a ton of factors that are different between us, and they are allowed their own experiences, and I'm making room for their experiences and their needs, not just mine. So that's how I meet the altruism goal. So I reframe that goal to respect the other person's autonomy and limit my offers of help to what I can actually sustain. But this new goal doesn't automatically meet my need to feel safe and emotionally regulated. I can still end up living in a house full of people I love dearly who are emotionally dysregulated and not helping at all with my need to feel safe. Meeting my need for regulation and security tends to require multiple goals. Again, I can't set the goal of having a nice, quiet home if other people live there. Realistically, I can only control myself, not the people I live with. Living alone is a pretty great solution, but it's not always feasible. And so when I live with others, here are some of the goals that I use to meet my need for safety. So I carve out time and space for myself to relax. And this can involve communicating to my loved ones that I need some introvert time and I'm not ready to socialize right now, and then sticking to that. It can mean going out to quiet spaces, taking long walks. It can mean listening to music on my earbuds so that while I can't have quiet, I can spend some time hearing a sound that I enjoy and that doesn't stress me out, and that helps me resettle a lot. I also need to make it a point to spend time with people around whom I do feel safe and secure. For most of my life, I largely relied on pets for my safe social time. Thankfully, as an adult, I have formed relationships where I do feel safe. So I now have human connections as well, where we can meet this safety need for each other. Don't worry, my cat still has a flourishing career as my emotional support animal. I've started scheduling time for my hobbies and growth efforts, so I put them right on my phone calendar. And that makes it a lot easier for me to maintain boundaries around my time and energy, and how much I can give away. And I set boundaries, both with my loved ones. So that might be a boundary like, I will not continue this conversation if you yell at me. And I also have to set them with myself. So that might sound like, I don't have to internalize my friend's distress in order to care about her. So for the internal boundaries, I'll picture my skin as a sort of wall. So my emotions live on the inside of this wall, and everyone else's emotions live on the outside. And I can perceive other people's emotions. They can matter to me. I can, give them support and understanding, but their emotions stay out there. They don't get to come in here and live inside me as if they were mine. Now, so far, most of the goals that I've mentioned have been ones that are fairly easy to admit to myself. I might need to adjust them, but it's pretty comfortable to acknowledge that I want to be on time for things, or that I want my loved ones to be happy. Some goals are hard to admit to myself, and I still need to do it. Because some of the hardest goals to examine and modify are my goals around community and social justice. If I don't do this work, it's very easy to approach these things in a way that hurts other people. So similar to my goal of making my loved ones happy, my default goal is to fix things, to save people, to make everyone happy. And just like my codependent tendencies in personal relationships, this opens me up to making some very questionable decisions. See, one of the big needs that lies underneath that fixing goal is my need for validation, to be seen as clever and brave and a good person and everything that might possibly counteract my shame and self-loathing. And when I try to help other people without interrogating that goal, when I'm operating out of my own need to escape from my shame and be everybody's favorite, it's easy to show up in ways that are a problem. It's easy to start talking over the people who are directly affected by an issue because I crave recognition for how well I understand it. It's easy to emotionally invade someone's space because I want them to see me as a good person so badly that I disregard the cues they're giving me about what their actual comfort zone is. It's easy to get overwhelmed by all the problems that I can't solve and don't know how to solve, instead of looking for people who are already working on solutions and learning how to support them. Because you see, in order to counteract my shame, in order to be the hero that would theoretically make me stop hating myself, I have to be the person who solves all the problems. And when I'm operating out of that framework, I forget other people know things I don't, and I should probably listen to them. If you've ever heard someone from a marginalized group talk about allies centering themselves, those are some examples of what they're talking about. Now, getting to be on both sides of this conversation as someone who's marginalized in some ways and privileged in others, I hate it when I need help and the people trying to help me insist on talking over me, ignoring my perspectives, or demanding a cookie for basic decency. So it's very understandable to me that other people feel the same and would want my help to come without the self-centering. So I have to admit that need for validation to myself, even though it hurts to see myself as someone who craves validation. And then I have to make some new goals. Now, I found that I can keep a goal that I may never achieve as a long-range dream goal, so long as I remember to create sub-goals that are actually achievable. So I'm able to set this overarching goal of building a world where everyone gets to flourish, as long as I set a concrete and achievable goal for the individual things that I'm working on. So sometimes my goal is to get money and resources to this group to help supply food for people struggling in my community. It might be to make sure that there are some allergy-friendly options out there, because people with food allergies can struggle with food insecurity too. Sometimes my goal is to get all the volunteers and vendors registered and checked in for this community event. And sometimes it's pack supplies for this group to distribute. It might even be learn from what this person is saying, quietly, without seeking validation, and with the understanding that I might be asked to change my behavior, and I might need to actually do that. So these kinds of goals address the altruistic need that's underneath my goal to fix everything. My need to escape from the shame and to feel like I'm a good person is a need that I'm going to have to address in other ways. And part of this process comes through my personal relationships, kind of like that need for safety that I talked about earlier. I have a few friendships where we either explicitly stated that we were going to be cheerleaders for each other, or where it just naturally emerged as part of our dynamic. But these friends remind me that I am a good person, and I remind them of the same, and we help each other build that sense of security. And these mutually affirming relationships help keep me on an even keel with my sense of self, so that I'm already emotionally regulated when I show up in my communities, and I'm not desperately seeking regulation while trying to do social justice work. It's a little bit like eating regular meals and snacks so that I don't show up to my friend's house with my blood sugar crashing and demand that they feed me and fix my problem. I, like so many people, am way easier to be around if I keep myself fed. The other piece of dealing with my shame and gaining that sense of security is doing what people call the inner work. So my inner work on issues like shame is, honestly, it's a lot. And I can't fit it all into one video, especially one that I'm already this far into. So as I share more in the future about particular kinds of inner work that I do, just know it's a pretty safe bet that I have used almost all of them to deal with shame at one point or another. But for now, my quick bird's eye view, here's what my shame work tends to look like. I dig through my various triggers, the words that pop up automatically in my head, the things that make me want to shrivel up and cry, and I ask myself why. Why do I feel so ashamed of not being a mythic hero? Why do I cry and shake when I have to talk about money? Why does the word worthless resonate with me in a way that other words like kind or intelligent just don't? Sometimes I have to start off with logically disproving some things, the way I do with automatic negative thoughts. There are times I can do this on my own, and there are times when I get stuck and I need a therapist or a friend to provide an outside perspective. Get me out of my own head, give me another frame of reference. But I found that a lot of the time, I need more than just logical arguments. I have this tendency to intellectualize my emotions away before I've actually processed them. And so those emotions sit there, like a bit of shrapnel inside of a closed wound. And they continue to cause problems until I reopen the wound and actually deal with them. And this is where I have to break out a lot of the less structured therapy techniques that I use. So this can be stream of consciousness journaling, writing vent letters that I never send to anybody, acceptance work, inner child work, parts work, internal family systems. And a lot of these are techniques that I originally kind of scoffed at when they were introduced, but they have ended up having a huge impact on my mental health. So, plot twist, I guess. Even my mental health goals have had to shift over time. So I've had to make a shift away from make the icky feeling go away and toward allow myself to feel this icky feeling so that I can understand it and address the needs or the wounds that it's coming from. All right, I'm going to leave it there for today. Please like the video if you've enjoyed it or found it helpful. Share it with a friend who could stand to cheat the gods a bit, and I'll be back soon with a new video.